Jake Morrison stood in the middle of what used to be New Geneva. The city was gone now. Only broken concrete and twisted metal remained where millions of people once lived and worked. His special eyes scanned the empty streets. These eyes were not normal human eyes. They had been made by scientists to see farther and clearer than any regular person could see. The war was over. Earth had won, but the cost was terrible. Almost everyone was dead. The planet looked like a giant graveyard made of burned buildings and crashed spaceships. Jake was the only one left from Project Apex. He was the last super soldier alive. 3 years ago, the aliens came. They called themselves the Centauri. They arrived in huge black ships that covered the sky like storm clouds. At first, the armies of Earth tried to fight them with normal weapons and regular soldiers. It did not work. The Centauri were too strong, too fast, and too smart. They destroyed entire cities in minutes. They killed anyone who tried to fight back. When the regular armies failed, the leaders of Earth made a desperate choice. They started Project Apex. Scientists took the best parts of human DNA and mixed them with advanced technology. They created 12 super soldiers who could move faster than cars, lift trucks with their bare hands, and think like computers. Jake was one of them. Now he was the only one still breathing. Jake's body was not entirely human anymore. His bones were made stronger with metal. His muscles were enhanced with special fibers that made him 10 times stronger than a normal person. Computer chips in his brain could calculate battle plans in seconds. Weapons were built into his arms and chest. He could fight an entire army by himself and win, but being the strongest did not make him feel better about being alone. He walked through the rubble of a school. Children's drawings were still stuck to the walls, somehow surviving when everything else was destroyed. Jake stopped and looked at a picture of a family standing in front of a house. The drawing was made with crayons by a child who was probably 7 years old. The child was dead now, along with everyone else in the city. Jake's enhanced hearing picked up a sound. It was very quiet, but his ears could hear things that normal people could not. Someone was walking through the debris about 2 blocks away. Jake moved toward the sound, his feet making no noise on the broken glass and concrete. He found a woman sitting on a pile of bricks. She was crying. Her clothes were torn and dirty. She looked like she had not eaten in days. When she saw Jake, she tried to run, but she was too weak. "Please don't hurt me," she said. Jake knelt down beside her. "I won't hurt you." "My name is Jake Morrison. I'm with the Earth Defense Force." The woman stared at him with wide eyes. "You're one of them." "One of the super soldiers. I thought you were all dead." "I'm the last one," Jake said. "What's your name?" "Betty Williams." "I was hiding in the underground tunnels when the city was attacked. I just came up today to look for food." She wiped her eyes. "Is it really over? Are the aliens gone?" Jake nodded. "They're gone. We won." Betty started crying again, but this time she was smiling too. "My husband and my kids. They didn't make it to the tunnels, but at least it's over now. At least no one else will die." Jake felt something strange in his chest. The computer parts of his brain told him it was sadness, but he had been trained to ignore such feelings. Super soldiers were supposed to focus on the mission, not on emotions. But looking at Betty, he could not ignore the feeling. "There are others hiding in the tunnels," Betty said. "Maybe 100 people. We were afraid to come out. We didn't know if it was safe." "It's safe now," Jake said. "I'll help you find them." As they walked toward the tunnel entrance, Jake's communication device started beeping. The sound was different from normal military signals. This was something new. Something alien, but not Centauri. Jake pressed the device in his ear. "This is Commander Morrison," a voice spoke in broken English. The accent was strange, like nothing Jake had ever heard. "Human soldier, please respond. We are Veyron Republic. We need help. The Centauri attack our worlds. Many die. We hear humans defeat Centauri. Please help us." Jake stopped walking. Betty looked at him with confusion. "Who is that?" "I don't know," Jake said. He spoke into the device. "This is Commander Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. Identify yourself." "I am Ambassador Keth Joran of Veyron Prime. We are peaceful people. We have families, children, like humans. Zentari ships come to our system. They destroy our cities. They kill our people. We cannot fight them alone. Please, will you help us? Jake's tactical computer immediately started analyzing the situation. The Zentari had not just attacked Earth, they were attacking other worlds too. Other species were dying just like humans had died. The war was not over. It was bigger than anyone had imagined. Commander Morrison, another voice said. This one was human. It was General Lisa Carter, one of the few Earth military leaders who had survived the war. We're picking up the same signal. There are dozens of them, Jake. Distress calls from across the galaxy. The Zentari are conducting a systematic campaign of extermination. Jake helped Betty down into the tunnel where the other survivors were waiting. They looked at him with hope and fear. These were the people he had been created to protect. But now there were other people on other worlds who needed protection too. What are my orders, General? Jake asked. We don't have enough ships or soldiers left to help anyone, General Carter said. Earth barely survived. We lost 90% of our population. Most of our military is gone, but what? But you're still here, Jake. You're the most advanced warrior humanity has ever created. These other species don't have anything like you. They're being slaughtered because they don't know how to fight a war like this. Jake looked at the tunnel full of survivors. These people needed help rebuilding their world. They needed protection and guidance. But across the galaxy, entire civilizations were being destroyed by the same enemy that had nearly killed everyone on Earth. What are you asking me to do? Jake said, We're asking you to save them all. Jake was quiet for a long moment. He had been built to win Earth's final war. His purpose was to protect humanity. But now he was being asked to protect everyone else too. Aliens he had never met, on worlds he had never seen, fighting a war they could not win alone. Betty tugged on his sleeve. Commander, are you okay? Jake looked down at her. She was just a regular person who had lost everything but still found the strength to keep going. If she could be brave, then maybe he could be brave too. I have to go, Jake told her. There are other people who need help. Will you come back? Betty asked. Jake did not know how to answer that question. He might not survive whatever was waiting for him out there among the stars. But he knew that if he did not try to help, more people would die. More families would be destroyed. More children would never get the chance to grow up and draw pictures of their homes. I'll try, Jake said, as he walked back toward the surface. Jake's communication device crackled with more distress calls. Species he had never heard of were begging for help. The Zentari were spreading across the galaxy like a plague, destroying everything in their path. Jake Morrison had been built to win Earth's final war. Now he was going to fight everyone else's wars too. He just hoped he was strong enough to win them all. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison left Earth. He stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, the fastest ship humanity had left. Through the large windows, he could see the stars rushing past as they traveled through hyperspace toward the Valeran system. The journey would take 3 more days, and Jake spent most of his time staring at those distant lights, thinking about what he was about to do. The ship was not very big. It had a crew of only 40 people, all volunteers who had chosen to leave their ruined world behind. Captain Roy Hudson was in charge of the ship. He was a good man who had lost his family during the Zentari invasion. Like everyone else on the ship, he had nothing left on Earth except bad memories. Dr. Amy Roberts was also on the ship. She was one of the scientists who had helped create Jake and the other super soldiers. She was supposed to keep an eye on Jake's mental health, but Jake did not like talking to her. Every time they spoke, she reminded him of things he wanted to forget. Jake, you need to eat something, Dr. Roberts said, as she found him standing alone in the observation deck. You haven't had a proper meal in 2 days. Jake did not turn around. I don't need as much food as regular people. My body is more efficient. That's not the point. You're avoiding the crew, you're not sleeping, and you're spending all your time alone. These are warning signs. Jake finally looked at her. Dr. Roberts was in her 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes. She had watched 11 of the 12 super soldiers die during the war. Jake was the only one left, and he could see the worry. In her face, warning signs of what? Jake asked. Of losing yourself. The other soldiers, they started to change near the end. They became more machine than human. They stopped caring about anything except completing their missions. I don't want that to happen to you, Jake turned back to the stars. Maybe that would be better. Machines don't feel guilty about the people they couldn't save. Is that what you think? That you're guilty for surviving when others didn't? Jake did not answer. He had been created to be the perfect soldier, but being perfect had not been enough. 11 of his fellow super soldiers had died. Billions of humans had died. And now he was flying through space to fight a war for people he had never met, using skills that had been programmed into him by scientists who thought they could create the perfect weapon. You weren't designed for peacekeeping, Jake, Dr. Roberts said softly. Your brain is wired for combat. Every situation you encounter, your first instinct is to find the most efficient way to destroy the enemy. But what happens when you meet people who don't want to be soldiers? What happens when you encounter problems that can't be solved by winning a war? Jake looked at his hands. They looked normal, but he could crush steel with them. Hidden weapons were built into his arms and chest. His entire body was a weapon designed to kill. Then I'll learn to solve problems another way. Dr. Roberts smiled, but it was a sad smile. I hope you can. Because the Valerans are not like us. They're not warriors. They're peaceful people who have never fought a real war. If you try to turn them into soldiers like you might destroy the very thing you're trying to protect. 3 days later, the UES Defiance dropped out of hyperspace near Valerum Prime. Jake stood on the bridge and watched the planet grow larger on the main screen. It was beautiful. The surface was covered with blue oceans and green continents. Cities sparkled like jewels in the daylight. It looked like Earth had looked before the war, when people still believed the universe was a safe place, but Jake's enhanced eyes could see the signs of battle. Orbital stations were burning. Pieces of destroyed ships floated in space like metal snow. 3 large Zentari vessels were moving slowly around the planet, firing their weapons at anything that moved. My God, Captain Hudson whispered. They're doing the same thing they did to us. Jake's tactical computer immediately started analyzing the situation. The Zentari had 17 smaller ships and 3 large battleships. The Valeran defense fleet was down to maybe 30 ships, most of them damaged. The planet's surface showed signs of bombardment. The Zentari were not trying to conquer Valeran Prime. They were trying to destroy it. Captain, take us in closer, Jake said. I need to make contact with the Valerans. As the Defiance moved toward the planet, Jake opened a communication channel. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. I'm here to help. The voice that answered was like music. It rose and fell in patterns that reminded Jake of singing. Commander Morrison, this is Ambassador Keth Joran. We have been waiting for you. Our situation is desperate. The Zentari have been attacking. U.S. for 6 days, we have lost many ships and many lives. I can see that, Jake said. What are your defensive capabilities? There was a pause. We have weapons, but they are not very powerful. Our ships are built for exploration and trade, not for war. Our people are scientists and artists, not soldiers. We have never fought a war like this before. Jake felt something cold in his stomach. These people had no idea what they were up against. The Zentari were not just another enemy. They were a force of nature, like a hurricane or an earthquake. They could not be reasoned with or negotiated with. They could only be stopped by superior force, and the Valerans did not have that kind of force. Ambassador Joran, I need to meet with your military leaders immediately. We need to coordinate our defense. I will arrange a meeting. But Commander, you should know that we do not have military leaders as you understand them. We have peacekeepers and emergency responders, but no one with experience in warfare. Jake closed his eyes. This was going to be harder than he thought. 2 hours later, Jake found himself in a room aboard a Valeran ship. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft light. The air smelled like flowers. Everything was beautiful and peaceful, which made Jake feel even more out of place. Ambassador Joran was tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of translucent stone. When he moved, his body caught the light and threw it back in. Rainbow patterns. His voice was like a song, even when he was speaking about serious things. Commander Morrison, we are honored by your presence. Your victory over the Zentari has given hope to many species across the galaxy. Jake looked around. The room, there were 12 Valerans present, all of them dressed in flowing robes that seemed to be made of light itself. They looked at him with curiosity and hope, but also with fear. Jake realized that his presence made them nervous. He was a weapon in a room full of people who had never seen real violence. Tell me about your ships, Jake said, trying to keep his voice gentle. What kind of weapons do you have? We have plasma cannons, said one of the Valerans. They are designed to disable rather than destroy. We also have shield generators and faster-than-light drives. But our ships are not built for prolonged combat. What about your ground forces? We have peacekeepers who maintain order on our worlds. They carry stun weapons and crowd control devices. But they have never fought against an enemy like the Zentari. Jake felt his frustration growing. These people were completely unprepared for the war they were facing. They had the technology to fight, but they did not have the mindset. They were sheep trying to fight wolves. Ambassador Joran, Jake said, I need you to understand something. The Zentari are not like other enemies. They don't want to conquer you or control you. They want to eliminate you completely. Every man, woman, and child on your worlds. They will not stop until you are all dead. The room became very quiet. Jake could see fear in the Valerans' eyes, but also something else. Determination. Then, we must learn to fight them, Joran said. Will you teach us? Jake looked at these peaceful people who had never hurt anyone, who had built a civilization based on cooperation and understanding. He was about to teach them how to kill. Yes, Jake said, I'll teach you. But you need to understand that war changes people. Once you learn to fight like this, you can never go back to being what you were before. Joran's crystalline features caught the light as he nodded. Then we will change. Because the alternative is extinction. As Jake began to explain basic military tactics to people who had never fired a weapon in anger, he wondered if he was saving the Valerans or destroying them. Either way, there was no turning back now. The first battle was a disaster. Jake had spent 3 days teaching the Valeran commanders basic military tactics. But when the time came to fight, everything went wrong. Jake stood on the bridge of the Valeran command ship, watching the battle unfold on the main screen. The Zentari had brought reinforcements. Now they had 25 ships instead of 17. The Valeran fleet had 32 ships, but most of them were damaged from previous fights. Remember what I taught you, Jake said into his communication device. Hit the largest ship first. Concentrate all your fire on its engines. Don't spread your attacks around. But Commander Morrison, came the voice of Captain Valkorin, the leader of the Valeran fleet. If we attack the large ship, the smaller ones will fire on the city. Many civilians will die. Jake felt his frustration growing. If you don't destroy the large ship, everyone will die. The civilians, the soldiers, everyone, this is how war works. We cannot sacrifice innocent lives for military advantage, Corin replied. It goes against everything we believe. Jake watched as the Valeran ships spread out, trying to protect the planet and fight the Zentari at the same time. It was exactly what he had told them not to do. The Zentari immediately took advantage of the scattered formation. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, focusing their fire on individual Valeran vessels. Captain Corin, you're making a mistake, Jake said. Pull your ships back and form a battle line. Negative, Commander. We cannot abandon the civilians. Jake watched in horror as the Zentari battlecruiser fired its main weapon. The energy beam cut through 3 Valeran ships like they were made of paper. The explosions lit up the darkness of space, and Jake knew that hundreds of Valerans had just died because their commander was too civilized to fight properly. "All ships, retreat to the moon base," Jake ordered. "We're falling back." "Commander." "Morrison," Corin said, "we cannot retreat. The civilians on the planet need our protection." "The civilians will all be dead if we lose the entire fleet," Jake replied. "Sometimes you have to lose a battle to win a war." But the Valerans did not retreat. They continued to fight, trying to save everyone at once. Jake watched as ship after ship was destroyed. By the time the battle was over, the Valeran fleet was reduced to 12 ships. The Zentari had lost only 2. Jake found himself in the medical bay of the UES Defiance later that night. Dr. Roberts was treating wounded Valerans who had been rescued from destroyed ships. Their crystal-like skin was cracked and bleeding. Some of them were making soft musical sounds that Jake's enhanced hearing identified as expressions of pain. "This isn't working," Jake told Captain Hudson, who was standing beside him. "They're too afraid to fight like they need to fight." Hudson was quiet for a moment. He had fought in the war for Earth and had seen many good people die. "Maybe that's the point," he said finally. "Maybe we're not here to turn them into us. Maybe we're here to find a better way." Jake looked at Hudson with surprise. "There is no better way. War is war? Either you fight to win or you lose and die? That's how it works, is it?" Hudson asked. "Look around you, Jake. These people are trying to save their families and their homes. They're fighting for the same things we fought for, but they're doing it without losing their humanity. Maybe we can learn something from them." Jake did not understand what Hudson meant. His brain was designed to analyze military situations and find the most efficient path to victory. The Valerans' refusal to sacrifice civilians was not efficient. It was weakness that would get them all killed. But as Jake watched Dr. Roberts work on the wounded Valerans, he noticed something strange. The injured aliens were not angry or afraid. They were sad about their friends who had died, but they were not filled with hatred for the enemy. They still cared about protecting innocent lives, even after losing so many of their own people. The next day, Jake was assigned to work directly with Lieutenant Commander Zara Voss, a Valeran officer whose job was to coordinate rescue operations. Voss was different from the others. She had been trained as a peacekeeper, but she seemed to understand the reality of war better than her commanders. "Commander Morrison," Voss said as they met in the planning room, "I know you think we are foolish for trying to protect civilians during battle. But you must understand, if we become like the Zentari, if we stop caring about innocent lives, then we have already lost everything that matters." Jake looked at her carefully. Voss was smaller than most Valerans, but there was something strong about her. Her crystalline features were more angular than the others, and her voice had a different quality to it. "I understand that you want to protect your people," Jake said. "But the way you're fighting now, you're going to lose everything anyway. The Zentari don't care about your values. They only understand strength. Then teach us to be strong without becoming monsters," Voss said. Jake was about to respond when an alarm sounded. Another Zentari attack was beginning. This time, the enemy was targeting the refugee camps on the planet's surface. Thousands of Valeran families were in danger. "I'm going down to the planet," Jake said. "I can help coordinate the evacuation." "I'm coming with you," Voss said. Jake wanted to refuse, but he needed someone who understood the local situation. They took a small transport ship down to the planet's surface. The refugee camp was in chaos. Valeran families were running in all directions as Zentari fighters screamed overhead, firing their weapons at anything that moved. Jake immediately began organizing the evacuation. His enhanced brain calculated the most efficient routes to the underground shelters. But as he worked, he noticed that Voss was doing something different. She was not just moving people to safety. She was calming them down, helping them stay organized, keeping families together. "We need to move faster," Jake told her. "The Zentari ground forces will be here in 20 minutes. "I know," Voss said. "But if we panic these people, more will die than if we take a few extra minutes to do this right." As they worked together, something unexpected happened. Voss accidentally touched Jake's hand while they were helping an injured child. The moment their skin made contact, Jake felt a strange sensation in his mind. Images and memories that were not his own flooded his consciousness. He saw the battle from Voss's perspective. But it was not just what she had seen. It was what she had felt. The pain of watching her friends die. The fear for her people. The desperate hope that somehow they could survive without becoming something terrible. But more than that, Jake saw something else in Voss's memories. He saw his own memories, but filtered through her perception. She had somehow accessed his thoughts during the brief contact. She had seen the Battle of Luna Station, where Jake had destroyed 17 Zentari ships by himself. She had seen the streets of New Geneva after the war, filled with the bodies of the dead. When the connection was broken, both of them staggered backward. Voss looked at Jake with wide eyes filled with horror. "You carry the weight of your entire species," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "How do you bear it?" Jake did not know how to answer. He had never told anyone about the nightmares that came when he tried to sleep, about the faces of the people he had failed to save, about the crushing responsibility of being the last super soldier, the final weapon of a dying world. "I don't know if I can anymore," he said. Voss stepped closer to him. "On my world, we believe that strength shared is strength doubled. You have been carrying this burden alone for too long." "I was made to carry it alone," Jake said. "That's what super soldiers do. We complete the mission, no matter the cost." "But what if the mission is not about winning?" Voss asked. "What if the mission is about making sure that something good survives? What if victory means preserving the things that make life worth living?" Jake looked around the refugee camp. Despite the chaos and danger, he saw Valran families helping each other, parents comforting frightened children, strangers sharing food and water, medical workers treating anyone who was hurt, even if they were not from their own community. For the first time since the war began, Jake started to wonder if there might be another way to fight. Not just to destroy the enemy, but to protect what was good in the universe. Not just to win, but to make sure that the victory was worth having. "Teach me," Jake said to Voss. "Show me how to fight without losing what makes us human." Voss smiled, and for the first time in months, Jake felt something besides the cold efficiency of his programming. He felt hope. 3 months had passed since Jake's first battle with the Valrans. The war was changing, and so was Jake. He spent his days learning about Valran culture and their unique abilities. What he discovered amazed him. The Valrans could share thoughts and emotions through touch. This ability, which they called mind-linking, allowed them to coordinate complex actions without using radios or computers. When Valran pilots linked their minds, they could fly their ships like they were dancing together in space. Jake was working with Zara Voss in the training center when the first message arrived. It came from a species called the Koran hegemony. Unlike the peaceful Valrans, the Korans were natural warriors. They had been fighting the Zentari for 20 years. "Commander Morrison," the message said, "we have heard of your success with the Valrans. We wish to send a delegation to study your methods. Perhaps we can learn from each other." General Nash Warren, the leader of the Koran delegation, arrived 2 days later. He was a huge man with scars covering his arms and face. His people looked like humans, but they were stronger and tougher. They had been bred for war over thousands of years. "So you're the human who taught crystal people how to fight," Warren said when he met Jake. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "I have to admit, I didn't think it was possible." Jake had arranged a demonstration of the new Valran tactics. Instead of fighting like individual ships, the Valran pilots now linked their minds and moved as one unit. They could change direction instantly, coordinate attacks without speaking, and cover each other's weaknesses. Warren watched the demonstration with growing interest. "Impressive," he said. "But can they handle real combat?" "The Zentari don't fight. Training exercises. They're learning," Jake said. "But they need time to adapt." "Time is something we don't have," Warren replied. "The Zentari are moving toward the Koran home system. We estimate 6 months before they arrive in force." We need every advantage we can get. Jake spent the next week working with both the Valerans and the Corans. It was not easy. The two species had completely different approaches to everything. The Corans believed in overwhelming force and direct attacks. The Valerans preferred careful planning and minimal casualties. The Corans thought the Valerans were weak. The Valerans thought the Corans were brutal. This will never work, Colonel Beth Martinez told Jake. She had arrived from Earth with a supply ship and was helping coordinate the training. These people are too different. They can't even agree on basic strategy. Jake was beginning to understand. The problem: each species was trying to fight the Zentari using their own methods, their own strengths. But the Zentari had been defeating everyone by adapting to each enemy's fighting style. What if the solution was not to fight like humans or like Valerans or like Corans, but to fight like all of them at once? The idea came to Jake during a battle planning session. He was watching a Valeran pilot practice linking with a Coran gunner. The Valeran could sense exactly where the Coran wanted to aim, and the Coran could feel the Valeran's understanding of the ship's movement. Together they were more accurate than either could be alone. What if we combined everything? Jake said suddenly. Everyone in the room looked at him. Ambassador Joran, General Warren, Lieutenant Commander Voss, and Captain Hudson were all staring at him like he had said something crazy. Explain, Warren said. Jake moved to the tactical display. The Zentari win because they're unified. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon works toward the same goal. But they're also predictable. They use the same tactics against everyone. Because those tactics usually work. He pointed to different areas of the display. What if we created units that combined Valeran coordination with Coran firepower? What if we used human adaptability to connect different species together? The Zentari have never faced anything like that. It's impossible, Warren said. My people don't have the Valeran mind-linking ability. We can't coordinate like they do. But you don't need to link minds, Jake said. You just need to trust each other, and trust can be learned. Over the next month, Jake began developing what he called adaptive warfare. Instead of trying to make everyone fight the same way, he created mixed units that used each species' natural abilities. Valeran empaths coordinated the overall strategy. Coran warriors provided the main attack force. Human engineers solved technical problems and adapted to unexpected situations. The first test came when another species asked for help. The Ethereal Collective was a group of energy beings who had been forced into physical bodies by Zentari technology. They could not fight in space, but they understood Zentari technology better than anyone else. We offer our knowledge, said Ethereal Speaker Lynn Kata when she arrived at the Valeran system. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. We know how Zentari ships work. We know their weaknesses. But we cannot fight them ourselves. Jake realized that this was exactly what his alliance needed. The Ethereals could provide intelligence and technical support. The Valerans could coordinate complex operations. The Corans could provide the muscle. And humans could adapt the strategy as needed. We're not just fighting for individual worlds anymore, Jake told the assembled representatives. We're fighting for the survival of all free species in the galaxy, and we're going to do it together. The first real test of Jake's new strategy came at the Battle of Keth Moran, a Valeran colony world that was under attack by a large Zentari fleet. Jake commanded a combined force of 60 ships from 4 different species. The battle began like all the others. The Zentari formed their standard attack formation and began their systematic destruction of the planet's defenses. But then something happened that they had never experienced before. The Valeran ships did not scatter to protect individual targets. Instead, they linked their minds and moved as one massive unit. The Coran ships did not charge directly at the enemy. Instead, they waited for the perfect moment to strike. The ethereal advisors provided real-time intelligence about Zentari ship systems, and human engineers modified weapons and shields during the battle to counter Zentari tactics. Enemy fleet is trying to adapt, reported Captain Hudson from the UES Defiance. They're changing formation. Expected, Jake replied. Ethereal units, what's their next move? They will attempt to divide our forces, Speaker Kaida said. They believe we will break apart like other alliances have. Valen coordination teams, maintain unity, Jake ordered. Core and assault groups, prepare for a concentrated attack. Human support units, ready adaptive countermeasures. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Zentari fleet was destroyed. Not damaged, not scattered, but completely eliminated. Jake's combined forces had lost only 3 ships. The victory sent a message across the galaxy. For the first time, someone had not just survived a Zentari attack, but had won decisively. Within weeks, more species were asking to join the alliance. You've done something incredible, Zara Voss told Jake as they watched ships from 12 different species arriving at the Valeran system. You've created something that has never existed before. We've created it, Jake corrected her. All of us together. But even as more species joined the alliance, Jake knew that the real war was just beginning. The Zentari would adapt to these new tactics eventually. They would send larger fleets, better weapons, smarter strategies. The alliance would need to keep evolving, keep learning, keep finding new ways to fight. What's our next move? Colonel Martinez asked. Jake looked at the tactical display showing Zentari movements across the galaxy. There was one system that appeared on every report, one location that all the Zentari fleets seemed to be protecting. We find their home, Jake said, and we end this war once and for all. As Jake planned the most ambitious military operation in galactic history, he realized that he was no longer the same person who had left Earth. He was still a super soldier, still a weapon designed for war. But now he was something more. He was a teacher, a student, and a bridge between species who had never worked together before. The final battle was coming. And this time, Jake would not be fighting alone. 2 years had passed since Jake Morrison left Earth. Now he stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, looking at the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. 300 ships from 17 different species stretched out before him. In the darkness of space, each ship carried crews who had lost everything to the Zentari. Each captain had volunteered to fight in what everyone knew would be the final battle. The target was Zarian Prime, the Zentari homeworld. Intelligence gathered from captured Zentari soldiers had revealed the truth about their species. They were not evil in the way humans understood evil. They were driven by something deeper and more terrible. Their entire biology was designed around consuming and dominating other life forms. They could not be reasoned with because cooperation was literally impossible for them. They could only be stopped. Jake walked through the corridors of his flagship, visiting crews from different worlds. In the Valeran section, crystalline beings meditated together, their minds linked in preparation for the complex coordination the battle would require. In the Koran section, warriors checked their weapons and sang traditional battle songs. In the ethereal section, energy beings housed in mechanical bodies worked on technical systems that would give the fleet its greatest advantages. Are you ready for this? Dr. Amy Roberts asked as she found Jake in the observation deck. She had stayed with him through the entire campaign, watching as he changed from a weapon into something more complex. I don't know if anyone can be ready for something like this, Jake replied, but we're as prepared as we can be. Dr. Roberts looked out at the massive fleet. Do you know what you've accomplished? You've united 17 species that had never worked together before. You've created a military force that fights for protection rather than conquest. You've changed the way war is fought. Jake thought about the path that had brought him here. 2 years ago, he had been a broken soldier standing in the ruins of New Geneva, convinced that he was nothing more than a weapon. Now he commanded an alliance that represented hope for every free species in the galaxy. We all changed, Jake said. That's what made this possible. The fleet began its final approach to Zarian Prime. Jake's tactical computers calculated the odds of success. Even with all their advantages, even with perfect coordination between 17 species, the numbers were not good. The Zentari had over 800 ships defending their homeworld. They had planetary defense systems that could destroy entire fleets. They had ground forces that outnumbered the Alliance army by 10 to 1, but Jake had learned something important during his time with the Alliance. Sometimes the most important victories were not about numbers or firepower. Sometimes they were about showing others that a different way was possible. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Morrison," Jake said into his communication system. He had been promoted to admiral 6 months earlier when the Alliance had grown too large for any single captain to command. "You know what we're here to do. The Zentari have been spreading across the galaxy for decades, destroying everything in their path. Today, we stop them." The voices that answered came in 17 different languages, but they all carried the same message. They were ready. The Battle of Zarian Prime began at 0800 hours Galactic Standard Time. Jake's strategy was the most complex military operation ever attempted. Each species had specific roles that played to their unique strengths. The Valerans coordinated the overall fleet movement through their mind-linking abilities. The Corans led the main assault forces. The Ethereals provided electronic warfare and technical support. Human engineering teams adapted tactics in real time as the battle developed. The Zentari response was immediate and overwhelming. Their ships moved in perfect formation just as they always had. Their weapons fired with mechanical precision. Their tactics were flawless according to every military doctrine. They had developed over centuries of conquest, but Jake's alliance did not fight according to any single military doctrine. They fought like 17 species working as one, each contributing what they did best. When the Zentari tried to divide the fleet, the Valeran coordinators kept everyone connected. When the Zentari concentrated their firepower, the Coran assault team struck from unexpected directions. When the Zentari adapted their technology, the ethereal specialists countered with new innovations. "Enemy fleet is breaking formation," reported General Nash Warren from his Coran battleship. "They're trying to surround us." "Expected, Jake," replied, "All units, implement Formation 7. Valeran coordinators, maintain unity. Ethereal teams, prepare countermeasures for their planetary defense systems." The battle raged for 8 hours. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Entire squadrons were destroyed in minutes. Jake watched as friends and allies died, knowing that their sacrifice was the price of stopping a force that would otherwise consume the entire galaxy. "Admiral Morrison," came the voice of Speaker Lynn Cada from the Ethereal Collective. "We have identified the primary control node for their planetary defenses, but it is heavily protected. Any attack would be suicide." Jake looked at the tactical display. The control node was located deep within the planet's surface, surrounded by hundreds of defensive platforms. Any ship that tried to attack it would be destroyed long before it could complete its mission, but Jake had been designed for impossible missions. His enhanced body could survive impacts that would kill normal humans. His tactical computers could calculate approach vectors that no one else could fly. His integrated weapon systems could punch through defenses that would stop conventional forces. "Prep a shuttle," Jake said. "I'm going down there." "Jake, no," said Captain Roy Hudson. "That's suicide. Even you can't survive that kind of defensive." "Fire. Maybe not," Jake said. "But I have a better chance than anyone else. And if I don't try, this war will never end." Jake's shuttle launched from the Defiance 30 minutes later. As he flew toward Zarian Prime, he thought about all the people who had shaped him during this journey. Betty Williams, the human survivor, who had shown him that ordinary people could be brave. Zara Voss, the Valeran officer who had taught him that strength could be gentle. General Warren, who had shown him that warriors could fight for something greater than themselves. Dr. Roberts, who had helped him remember that he was more than just a weapon. The planetary defenses opened fire. As soon as Jake entered the atmosphere, energy beams and missiles filled the space around his shuttle. Jake's enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge most of the attacks, but his ship was hit multiple times. Systems failed one by one as he descended toward the planet's surface. Jake's shuttle crashed 2 kilometers from the control node. He emerged from the wreckage with most of his armor destroyed and several of his enhanced systems offline. But he was still alive, and he still had a mission to complete. The facility was exactly what Jake had expected. Massive walls, automated defense turrets, and hundreds of Zentari soldiers. Under normal circumstances, it would have been impossible to penetrate. But Jake had learned something from his alien allies. Sometimes the impossible became possible when you were fighting for something bigger than yourself. Jake fought his way through the facility, using everything he had learned during 2 years of war. He moved with Valeran-inspired coordination, struck with Corran-level ferocity, and adapted with human ingenuity. The Zentari defenders were powerful, but they had never faced anything like him. When Jake reached the control center, he found himself face-to-face with the Zentari Prime Commander, the being that coordinated all Zentari military operations across the galaxy. It was larger than the other Zentari, with additional cybernetic enhancements that made it a living weapon. "Human," the Prime Commander said in perfect English. "You have caused considerable disruption to our expansion plans. But your resistance ends here." Jake raised his weapons. "No, your expansion ends here." The fight between Jake and the Prime Commander lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. Both beings were perfectly designed for combat, but they represented completely different philosophies. The Prime Commander fought to dominate and consume. Jake fought to protect and preserve. In the end, Jake's weapons found their target. As the Prime Commander fell, Jake activated the charges he had placed throughout the control center. The explosion that followed disabled the planetary defense grid and sent a signal to every Zentari ship in the system without their central coordination. The Zentari fleet began to break apart. Individual ships fled in different directions. The organized force that had threatened the entire galaxy was scattered like leaves in a storm. Jake's communication device crackled with reports from the Allied fleet. "Admiral Morrison, this is General Warren. Enemy fleet is in full retreat. The planet's defenses are down. We've won." Jake looked around the destroyed control center. He had completed his mission, but the cost had been enormous. Thousands of Allied personnel had died in the battle. Jake himself was badly injured, and might not survive long enough to be rescued. But as he sat among the ruins of the Zentari Command Center, Jake felt something he had not experienced in years. Peace. The war was over. No more species would be destroyed by the Zentari. No more children would lose their families to alien invaders. His communication device activated one more time.